So as you can tell, I have five people in front of me, so I have a lot to live up to now after my five colleagues went in front of me. So I am going to speak a little bit, excuse me, about workplace-based learning and how do internal medicine trainees learn in the ambulatory care environment. And for this project, my supervisors are Frank Schmecht and Janneke Frambach, and so I'm very grateful to have them during this time. And just a little bit about me, just so you know who's standing here. So I'm from New York City. As Pascal said, I'm from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, which is on the right. And on the left is my family, Peter and Lucia. And so that actually is not a picture from New York. It's actually an island off of Helsinki after the AMI conference is here. And it's about 15 miles out. If anyone has ever been there, I highly suggest to take that trip. And they were here with me in March for the first part of the course. And Lucia absolutely loves Maastricht. She's so jealous that I'm here now. And I have very strict instructions to bring home lots of stroopwafels. So that is my job. They're all over my suitcase. And then on the right side is the school, Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, all those buildings. If you've been to New York City, we are a medical school that sits in a very interesting location, which sits in East Harlem, and then it borders the Upper East Side. And so we have an incredibly diverse and interesting patient population that we care for. And then we sit on Central Park, so that's Central Park in front of it. So to move on, so like I said, I want to do a workplace-based learning around AmCare, specifically for internal medicine residents. And some background is that there's really changing demographics globally, as everyone is very aware. The population is aging in all of our countries. And that's creating some interesting workforce issues for people in the outpatient setting. In addition, the innovations in technology have just drastically grown over the past 5-10 years. I mean, now you can, get a total hip, and be out in a day or two now in the parts of the States. And so that's creating an interesting dilemma because those two things are rolling up into affecting how I'm an internist, how we take care of patients, how quickly patients are in our outpatient setting. And then ultimately, how do we train them, train our trainees who are taking care of incredibly complex patients and with very long histories of chronic diseases. Oops. So what's the problem? The problem is this mismatch, right? So the mismatch is now between where we're trained as internists and where we practice, right? And so that picture up top is actually 1 century ago. It's 1917, and it's the doctor standing over the patient, talking probably about the patient and not to the patient. And I would probably put forward to you that that's happening right today across the street, right? It happened at home. And so that's how we learn in the hospital setting. They're going to order tests. They're going to get tests back later on. They're going to make decisions. They're going to help get the patient out as quickly as possible. But that's quite different than what most people are practicing, right? So there are groups of people that stay in hospital and practice, whether it be hospitalists, intensivists. But most physicians practice in the outpatient setting, especially if you're an internist. And that's happening down in the bottom picture, right? So that physician is standing there with a patient. What is wonderful about it is that she's going to be able to have a longitudinal relationship with people over many years. But the physician's going to make a lot of decisions right there without having much certainty of what to base that in, right? Because they don't have tests in front of them, they're not getting that back. There's the families there, the social issues, and it's a 15-minute visit. Right? And so it's a quite different experience in how you care for a patient, and most people are working in this setting. So my aim is in standing out now from the gaps, and then and then what the problem is around workplace-based learning, specifically how do internal medicine trainees learn in the ambulatory care environment, and so being very specific about the venue because their evidence isn't there about that. But we do know some things about how residents learn, and the literature shows these factors. So the context is obviously, it has been shown to be important, as well as the role of faculty in training the residents. And informal learning plays a large role, as does the social aspect of learning in the workplace. So we know these come mostly from what appears to be an inpatient surrounding. And so what I would like to do is to see, do the residents really learn the same way in the outpatient setting and the skills that they need to develop? And from that, this is the theoretical framework that I chose around situated cognition because of what we know in the evidence already, especially around context and the social nature. And out of the situated cognition is really the social nature of thinking and the importance of context. And this is really the recognition of this interaction between the participant and the environment, really, and for anyone that works in the outpatient setting knows how critical this is while you're taking care of your patients. There we go. So in order to illuminate the overarching aim, I am going to look at the various components of the framework. And so there's 5 studies here, which I'll go into shortly. First one is the literature review, and I'll show you what that is. And then the resident perspectives of taking care of patients in the outpatient setting. What is the influence of the learning environment in the outpatient setting? And then the resident-supervisor relationship has to be critically important. And finally, to look at the social interaction. So this is my approach to developing the questions. The first one is going to be a scoping review of the literature, and it's going to be on what's known about teaching and learning in the AmCare setting in internal medicine 2008 to 2017. This is actually a project that's going on currently and will serve as just a background information to sort of see what the lay of the land is around this topic. Research question number 2 is what are internal medicine residents' perspectives on rewards and challenges of caring for ambulatory care patients living with chronic illness. This was actually my MHPE thesis defense, and it was a qualitative research design based in grounded theory that I did at 3 large academic medical schools in the U.S. and internal medicine training programs. And out of it came multiple domains, but the one that is interesting here is that the residents just were able to give ways that their residency could improve their learning to provide care, and it's really an extension of this that has worked into this research proposal. Question 3 is how does the clinical learning environment influence internal medicine residents' learning in the ambulatory care setting? So this is about the learning environment. It's going to be a mixed method design here, and I'm going to use the ambulatory care learning educational environment measure as a quantitative approach, and from that to use that in addition to the theoretical framework to develop questions to then further delve into this concept of how what the environment is for their learning. Research question 4 is how do internal medicine residents learn in the AmCare setting a cognitive apprenticeship perspective? And so this one is going to be a qualitative design using a case study approach where the case is going to be 3 large academic residency programs in New York City. And then the perspectives from both the residents and the supervisors of the residents will be taken into consideration. And the last research question is how do faculty, clinical supervisors, and nursing staff contribute to internal medicine residents' learning in the AmCare setting as perceived by the resident supervisors and nurses. And this will be a qualitative design using a grounded theory approach because of the multiple the disciplines that we don't really know how this affects the residents. And the resident supervisors and nurses will all be interviewed for their perspective on how the residents learn. So they're the 5 questions in my overall research proposal. I really want to thank Janneke and Frank for really the great guidance I've had since March and coming with this project. And then my wonderful new cohort of new friends and colleagues that I have, which has been really wonderful to go through this process with. And then the faculty and staff here has been amazing, very, very kind during the whole period. And then, of course, Peter and Lucia, who may or may not be up at 4 in the morning in New York watching this, so I doubt it. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.